Mavs Celtics game one happened last night. Mavs are going to be fine. Okay. Honestly, I don't want to toot my own horn here, but I was right going into game one. Okay. I picked the Celtics. I said that they'd cover the 6.5. I said that they'd probably win by double digits. Okay. If you want to know what's going to happen before it happens, tune into this show right here because I'm telling you what's going on. I am. Last night, I think the game felt uglier than what it was. Okay, I don't think the game was as bad as what people are going to make it out to be. Look, the Boston Celtics are a good basketball team. Okay, the Boston Celtics, top to bottom, better team than Dallas. They are. Okay, I've said that the entire way. The reason why I picked the Mavs in 6 is because they had the best player in the series. And the Mavericks came out in the first quarter, and I thought they looked a little tight, some turnovers, not really sure what to do. I think part of that had to do with what Boston's game plan was on defense. I thought that they threw in some wrinkles that Dallas probably didn't expect. They cross-matched. They put Jason Tatum on Gafford to start, and I think that kind of threw Dallas for a bit of a loop, and it was interesting, right? And while the Mavericks came out tight, Boston Celtics came out hot, and that's the way that it goes sometimes. The Celtics won the first quarter by 17 points. They scored 37 points to the Mavericks 20. In the last 3 quarters, the Celtics outscored the Mavs by 1. Okay, the Mavericks won the third and fourth quarters. So winning the fourth quarter, not as big of a deal, right? Because with about 5 minutes left, all the starters got pulled. But even up to that point, like the Mavs were playing even with Dallas. And in the third quarter, Dallas goes on a big run. They expend all this energy. They cut the lead down to 8. Kyrie Irving, wide open 3 that could have cut it down to 5, and he missed. And then Celtics timeout. They come out of the timeout and they respond with a big run, push the lead right back up to like 16 or 17. And that was it. And that's what good teams do. It is. But I don't expect the Celtics to outscore the Mavericks by 17 points in the first quarter to start every game. Okay, if that happens, then sweep for Boston. But that's not going to continue to happen. Boston won that game because of their hot shooting in the first quarter. They were 7 of 15 from 3 at the end of the first quarter. Like they just hit a barrage of 3-point shots. And sometimes when you play a team like Boston who takes as many threes as they do, that's going to happen. And when that happens, you can't start slow. You can't only score 20 points. Okay, so I think maybe, Dallas was nervous. It was their first NBA Finals game for all of them, minus Kyrie Irving. If you pick the Mavericks to win the series, if you took my advice and you picked the Mavericks to win the series, don't freak out. Okay, that might be the theme of the show. Don't freak out about Anthony Richardson not throwing yesterday. Don't freak out if you pick the Mavericks to win the series. Like they did the same thing in game 1 against the Thunder. Okay, the Dallas Mavericks lost to the Thunder on the road in game 1 of that series by 22, and they won that series in 6 games. When you look at the Dallas Mavericks run this postseason, they lost game 1 against the Clippers. They lost game 1 against the Thunder. They won game 1 against Minnesota, to be fair, and then they lose game 1 against Boston. This is not out of the ordinary. Okay, they've gotten blown out in 3 out of their 4 game 1s. That's just the way that this team operates. Don't know why. Do I like it? No, not really, but that's who they are. And then they put together some adjustments for game 2, and then they play better. I think Jason Kidd and Pacers head coach Rick Carlisle had this very similar trait of game-to-game adjustments they're good at. Like that's kind of where most of their adjustments come into play. Whereas in-game, it can be a little dicey. But here's the thing. When you have Luka Doncic, your in-game adjustments don't have to be great because you have a guy that is that good and that talented. So this is a position that the Mavericks have been in before. They're going to go back. They're going to watch the tape. They might be doing it right now. They'll make some adjustments and be better in game 2. They'll have an NBA Finals game under their belt, so I don't think that they'll be as tight. I think they'll come out and throw an absolute haymaker to start in the first quarter of game 2, right? Like that's how they've operated under Jason Kidd in the playoffs. Okay, there's a reason why the Mavericks haven't lost back-to-back games in these playoffs. Okay, if you listened to the show yesterday, the result of last night's game isn't surprising, but some surprising things did happen. So I actually have a list of outliers in game 1 last night. Okay, there were several things that I thought happened in game one last night that were out of the ordinary. Let's start with the winning team, the Boston Celtics, because some things they did some things that I just don't think are going to continue to happen. For example, Porzingis was 8 of 13 from the floor. He scored 20 points in 21 minutes, and he had some tough shots on the road to that. He scored 18 of his 20 points in the first half. And we saw Dallas make a slight adjustment. They got more physical with Porzingis, and his effect went away a bit. Okay, now look. Kristaps Porzingis is a good player. He's going to make an impact in this series on both offense and on defense. He's going to score. He's going to block shots. But he's not going to continue to be as efficient as he was last night. Sometimes taking a month off can be good. Certainly seemed to be good for Porzingis last night, right? But I don't think he's going to continue to shoot 62% from the floor. Okay, another outlier, Peyton Pritchard off the bench for Boston. Played 19 minutes, if I remember correctly. Didn't make a shot. He was 0 of 7 from the floor. And he's a good scorer off the bench for the Celtics. He's going to get it going at some point. Moving on from there, I thought that the lack of aggressiveness from Jason Tatum was weird. Didn't have to be great in game one because Jaylen Brown and Porzingis and all their shooters really had it going. You know, it was really just an impressive game from Boston as a unit. I mean, like when your leading scorer only scores 22 points and you win by 17, like that speaks to your team as a whole. And so I thought as a whole, they look good, but I don't expect for everybody to play that well every night for Boston. Like that's going to change. And we're going to hit a point in this series because like Boston's not going to do that every night. They aren't going to win handily. It's not going to happen. Things are going to change at some point where the Celtics need Jason Tatum. And that is kind of the question around Boston. It's when games get tight, does Boston have the horses in Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum that can pull it out at the end? Now, last night when the Mavs cut the lead down to 8, we saw Tatum really assert himself a little bit more. Him and Jaylen Brown, they both got downhill. They got to the free throw line. Throughout this series, though, there are going to be moments like that where Jason Tatum has to assert himself. You know, he can't turn into game one Tyrese Halliburton in those moments where you just don't really know where he's at. So that's the last outlier. I thought everything else for Boston, for the most part, was pretty normal. Okay, like the way that Boston played is what we're going to continue to see from them. They're going to beat guys off the dribble. They're going to get to the rim. They're going to kick it out, and the ball's going to swing, and they're probably going to get an open three. That's what they do. Brad Stevens has done a beautiful job of putting that team together, and that's what their offense has been all year. Defensively, they're as good as everyone. They held Dallas to 89 points last night. Like, I think that speaks to their ability to defend, but they're not going to continue to hold the Dallas Mavericks to 89 points. It's not going to happen. The Mavericks were 7 of 27 from three-point range. That's not going to continue. PJ Washington, who's a good shooter, Derrick Jones Jr., who's been a good shooter, and Kyrie Irving combined to be 1 of 10 from 3. That's not going to continue to happen. They're going to shoot the ball better than that throughout the playoffs because they've shot the ball better than that all year, and they've shot the ball better than that throughout the playoffs in general, right? Like, you know, they might have been nervous or the week-long break maybe ruined some rhythm. Either way, I expect them to shoot the ball better in game 2 and through the rest of the series. I also expect for Kyrie to actually show up and to consistently play. He didn't take a shot in the fourth quarter, and he played about 6.5 minutes. Okay, Kyrie got off to a slow start, right? He only scored 12 points last night. He scored 6 points in each half. That's not going to continue. He finished with 12 points on 6 of 9 shooting from the floor. Okay, and he was 0-5 from 3. That's not going to continue either. Okay, he's too good of an offensive player to be held down like this, especially if he continues to get the looks that he got last night. I thought he missed some open shots. I mentioned earlier he had an opportunity to cut the lead down to 5 on a wide open 3, and he just missed it. Sometimes that's what happens. Here's the biggest outlier, though. Kyrie only scoring 12 points. That's not going to continue. And Luka Doncic only had 1 assist. And the Mavericks as a team only had 9 assists. Part of that was that they missed open looks. As I mentioned, they were 7 of 27 from three last night. And the other part of it was how the Celtics defended Dallas. Okay, Boston gave Luka the Nikola Jokic treatment in game one. Okay, Boston gave Luka the Zach Edey treatment, the treatment that Zach Edey got against UConn. Okay, they said, Luka, you can score as much as you want. We aren't going to allow you, though, to score 30 because he's going to get 30 because he's just that good of a player. We're not going to allow you to score 30 and get 12 assists. They stayed home. And there were these weird moments where Luka would beat a guy off a dribble or he'd get downhill coming off of a screen and he would continue to go. And then he would look up and he'd be like, where's the help? Like he would look to pass, kind of like Halliburton against the Knicks some. Like Halliburton would get into the lane and instead of looking to score, he was looking to pass the ball out. That's what Luka, there were some moments last night where Luka did that. And the help just never came from Boston. And I think that we're going to see an adjustment from Luka in his mentality, especially if the Celtics continue to deploy that type of defense on Luka, right? I think we'll see Luka be like, look, if you're going to let me score 50, then that's fine. Let me go score 50. Okay. Look, you can chalk up this game one loss for Dallas to shooting variance in the first quarter because after the first quarter, the game was even. Okay. Boston only outscored Dallas by 1 point in the second, third, and fourth quarters. Okay. I still think we have a great series in store for us. I think game 2 on Sunday is going to be great basketball. Can't wait. I think that game's on at 8:30. Not too sure on that one, but I can't wait for it. Game 2 in Boston is going to be electric. And OC weighing in here. OC said, you and Dan should apologize to Porzingis on the air. I never said anything bad about Porzingis that I can remember at least. Dan said that Porzingis has bad eyes. I don't even know what that means. Okay, I not saying that Dan's wrong, but I don't know what that means. I just remember watching Porzingis in Dallas. I think that, look, Porzingis has worked on his game, right? He shows up in New York. He has the injuries. The Mavericks trade for him. He and Luka play together. It doesn't go super great. And part of that was Porzingis couldn't post up. That is something that he has added to his game. Like when he was playing in Dallas, he was just a 7'3" guy who could shoot and anchor a defense. And he still is those two things. But he ends up in Washington. And you could have argued that last year he should have been an all-star. He was good in Washington last year. And part of that was because he has developed his post game. And when you look at Boston and you look at why Porzingis makes them so tough, is exactly what he did last night. He got a smaller defender on him and he hit shots over the top and he posted up and he did all those things. And like he's still going to have opportunities to do that. He's still going to continue to score off of those looks. If you're Dallas, though, I think you're content if Porzingis posts up 12 times a game, right? Because that's just not how the Celtics want to operate. The Celtics want to drive, kick, ball swings, open corner three. That is what Boston wants to do. And when you're playing against offensive teams or teams that are as good offensively as Dallas and Boston, you have to give something up. And I think if you're Dallas, I will give up Kristaps Porzingis taking 15-footers over 6'8" Josh Green. If you're Dallas, I think that's the thing that you want to give up. Just like if you're Boston, like you know that you either like there's something that you have to give up if you're Boston as well. And in game 1, they chose to say, hey, you know what, Luka, if you want to score 50, that's fine. We aren't going to let you, drive and kick and let all the other guys score. Right. So Boston elected to give up Luka getting shots at the rim, and it works for them. Dallas tried to take away, the rim, and that didn't really work either because then, Boston got into their drive and kick stuff. So teams are going to adjust. Game 2 is going to be good. Can't wait.